Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm very pleased to have with me as my guest Michael Burshteyn, who's a partner at Greenberg Traurig. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Richard. It's great to be here.
So, Michael, you have a very interesting background. One of the things I noted is that unlike a lot of lawyers, you actually went off and went to be an entrepreneur and started your own company, a company called Crypto Move. It looks like. Tell me a little bit about what motivated you to do that and what that company was all about.
So Crypto Move was a fun story. It was actually started by my dad. And so my
Oh.
dad is a software engineer and a computer scientist, and he's done distributed systems programming his whole
Uh-huh.
life. And so he was, working at some of the, early technology companies in the Valley and always had these side projects that he would work on. And when I was in law school, he had completed one of them and he called me about it. And so he had created a distributed programming language. So
Hmm.
you could program networked computers as if they were, operating as kind of one. And it makes it a lot easier if you abstract away the network programming concepts for engineers. So that he was excited about that. And I kind of told him, you know, programming languages are common and kind of random which ones take off. If you really want people to use this, create a killer app, show what the language can do. And so then he started working on what became CryptoMove. And so he developed this technology to take data, fragment it into pieces, into chunks, encrypt the fragments, and then across a system of distributed nodes, they would move around randomly, get re-encrypted. You'd have redundancy. And so it'd be kind of like a shell game. So for the attacker, as time goes on in today's systems, attackers can study, they can get data, even they can get encrypted data, then go back, steal the keys later. Um, with this concept, the data is constantly moving, shuffling, re-encrypting. So as time goes on, the entropy in the system doesn't actually go down. And
Hmm.
so he developed that, and by the time that was ready, I graduated law school. I was already an attorney. I was doing privacy, data security, um, litigation and things like that. And so at that point, my dad was, in need of a co-founder. And basically what
Wow.
happened was he was looking for people to be the CEO. He's a CTO, he's an engineer, develops the product. Um, and he couldn't find anyone. And so he was going to just like go back and get a job. He's going to say like, okay, can't find a co-founder. And
Wow.
so I, went to him and said, look, like we could do this. It was 2015. The startup market was pretty active for fundraising.
Yeah.
Um, I was seeing startups coming through the doors all the time. And I was like, this technology is just as good or better than what I'm seeing. And I had enough domain expertise doing privacy and data
Mm.
security law. And so that's how it started out. And so we jumped in, and then it was a whole like roller coaster ride over the next few years.
I'm sure. Well, what was the killer app then? I mean, the technology does sound very interesting, but what was the killer app?
So it basically became like a secure data vault.
Hmm.
And so what we would do is eventually we developed some use cases with storing like keys to cryptocurrencies.
Hmm.
That was one of our use cases, or API keys to cloud services,
Hmm.
which are really sensitive, and then you can put them in our vault and they'll get chopped up and constantly move around. We also had some contracts with the Air Force and the Department of Homeland Security, where we actually adapted the technology in a few different environments. So we put it onto um, drones, UAVs, and so you could have crypto move nodes on the drone and one down at the base, and then basically data would flow between them and it would be fragmented and encrypted as it goes.
Hmm.
And we worked in cloud environments. And so it basically just became this secure data technology. And we had some early adopters in media entertainment sector and the financial services sector too.
Wow. Did you raise venture capital? Did you end up raising venture capital?
We did, yeah, we did.
Wow.
We did the whole startup. classic journey basically. So it started out with just the two of us. We had some initial angel investors, which was tricky because, we weren't like that well connected with VC.
Yeah.
We're kind of unknown, but the technology was really strong. Um, and so we ended up raising all throughout the history of the company about $9.8 million dollars.
Wow.
And our lead, we had some great investors. So, Tim Draper was an investor through his firm, Draper Associates.
Oh, wow.
The chief security officer of Google at the time, some of the early executives at FireEye, Palo Alto Networks. So we had a really strong cap table. Um, and yeah, and then eventually our Series A was led by Arjun Sethi, who's now at Tribe Capital. Uh,
Wow.
and so yeah, so it was great. We definitely it was a different fundraising environment. A lot of my clients now, their startups are fundraising. Um, with the metrics that we had at the time, I don't know that like we would have gotten the same type of financing. Although we did have some heavy duty technology development that
Yeah.
you don't often see. But yeah, we did that.
Wow.
We had a big we built out a team, and it was very different than being a lawyer. I'll say like I had to it
I'll
was a
bet.
crash course in a lot of different things.
I'll bet. Well, what happened to the company? It sounds like you were off to a fantastic start.
Yeah, so basically we went for a while. The company continued, we grew, we kind of focused initially on just building out the back end of the data store and then some of these early use cases. We scaled up the team, and then we ran into some challenges around the Series B stage. So our
Mm,
Series A was hot. We had,
mm,
multiple top tier VCs interested, and we were generating revenue with some good customers. But what we ended up finding out is we were having trouble scaling our revenue at the pace that
mm,
we really needed to.
mm.
Some of our customers are like the government, or some of the early adopters, are looking at a really crowded security market. They kind of look at our technology probably as like a little futuristic, like maybe ahead of the market. And
Mm,
so it got put into R&D budget a lot of the time.
mm.
And so, in our trailing 12 months, um, kind of in 2019, we had done over 1 million in revenue. So like we were doing okay.
Yeah.
That wasn't strong enough to raise like a large Series B round. And so what we ended up doing was basically shrinking the company down. Uh, we have a bunch of intellectual property and just focusing on, let's wait for the market to catch up. Maybe a new team someday will pick it up. Um, or maybe we'll just, monetize IP or, different things. So yeah, so and then eventually that's where I went back to being a lawyer as well,
Mm, I
which
see.
I had missed during the time I was doing the company.
Mm, mm.
Um, I kind of missed what I'm doing now. But yeah, so I figured what would happen was either the company would take off and turn into, a major cybersecurity company, which I think it had the potential to do.
Yeah,
And then I
right.
would probably have been fired by like our VCs.
Mhm.
I'd go back to being a lawyer that way. Or the company would fail and I'd go back to being a lawyer. It was kind of in between, kind of what ended up happening. Um, but
Wow.
yeah, so
Interesting.
that was the whole journey.
Well, that sounds like quite an experience. Is your practice, I mean, you must have learned a lot from the company. When you went back to being a lawyer, did your practice focus change a little bit, or was it similar to what it was before?
Yeah, I mean, so it evolved and definitely is informed by the crypto move experience.
Yeah, I bet.
It's still in that, I was always interested in technology law, um, coming from like that background of just both parents engineers growing up in the valley.
Yeah.
And I'm technical enough to kind of like talk to engineers and, understand what they're doing and things like that. And so when I went back to being a lawyer, I continued focusing on privacy, data security. I started doing more work in crypto, um, and digital assets. And, just kind of like as the technology waves crash on the shore and the, cutting edge technologies evolve, that's where I focus my practice. And so these days I work with a bunch of AI related startups,
Mm.
crypto companies, SaaS, privacy data security companies, things like that. So it's definitely helped. I mean, there are some things I had to unlearn, like when you're working at a startup as a CEO, you don't really send emails longer than one line. You don't typically use punctuation. You don't proofread your emails. Obviously, when you're a lawyer, that all changes.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, but it's been very helpful just to,
Have,
it's like you've been on the other side. I had to manage outside counsel. We had all
yeah,
sorts of
right.
legal issues.
Yeah, right.
Um, and you kind of get a sense of like what it's like on the company side and how to be practical and board dynamics, all these things like are hard to
Yeah.
fully appreciate till you live through them.
Do you miss that at all? Would do you think you might you ever start another company again?
So, for me, like I got into this, like being a lawyer, because I was obsessed with debate in high
Uh-huh.
school and
Uh-huh.
college. So I was just
Uh-huh.
like, all I did was debate. And then when I graduated, it's like, what do I do now? And so it's either coaching debate or becoming a lawyer. And so this is the closest thing, that there is. And so, you know, to me, like building a legal practice is entrepreneurial, and especially at
Yes.
Greenberg Traurig, like the firm I'm at has that mentality. And so, I get everything. I get all of it, right? I get the business building, working with customers, now their clients, solving hard problems, developing a service offering and going to market with it. All these things exist in my current job. So like I don't think I'll be hopping off again. It was really just to help my dad, and I thought
Yeah.
it'd be a good experience. Opportunity is exciting. I believed in the technology, and I wanted to work with my dad. I thought it'd be
Yeah, that
a
sounds
good
super
opportunity.
cool. Well, since your parents were both engineers and your dad was a computer science, did you ever think about becoming a computer scientist yourself and doing that directly?
Sure, yeah. I mean, so I can code like a little bit like front end stuff. Like I did website development
Uh-huh.
uh before and during law school.
Uh-huh.
But uh, it's funny, like when I was in sometime around middle school, I was pretty good at math.
Uh-huh.
But then like I realized that my parents would be very, opinionated about my math homework and things like that. But when I would do English and language arts and debate and speech, they didn't really have, much to say, right? Because they're engineers,
Right.
and English is not their first language, obviously. Um, so I kind of leaned into that, and throughout I just went all in on debate, and
I
I love
see.
it. I love the competition. I'm a litigator, by training, so I love being, out there and dealing with cases and court and writing and all that stuff.
Well, does your science background, your programming background come in handy with your clients, understanding kind of what they're trying to do on a code level basis, like more deeper than just, at a high level? Does that come into play a lot?
Yeah, like having worked in a startup, managed, done the product management, recruited, hired engineers, and kind of, you know, filled a lot of gaps on that
Yeah.
helps. I'm kind of like a translator. Well, translate the technical situation into what the legal posture should be, and it does help you come up with creative arguments. It helps you, persuade, whether it's a judge or the other side. Um, yeah, it's definitely helpful. I'm never as technical as the client, but
Yeah.
just enough to kind of be dangerous.
Yeah. 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 Well, Michael, this has been a fascinating conversation. I really appreciate you sharing your story. Obviously, it's super unusual to go and be an entrepreneur and then go back to being a lawyer. So, again, I really appreciate you sharing the story and congratulations on your recent move.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it. It was great talking with you.
This is Richard Hsu and Michael Burshteyn.